The music industry has just been rocked to its core, and this affects all of us. TikTok is the largest website on earth, and with that, being the largest social platform, more visits than Google and YouTube, and there's been an ongoing Cold War of sorts for years that has just hit critical mass. The other day, Universal Music Group, which owns the largest market share of music in the world, put out a statement to the public voicing their frustration whilst negotiating a new licensing deal with TikTok. To keep it simple, licensing is what companies have to pay to be able to legally use music that they don't have the rights to. So think restaurants, cafes, movies, and in this case, TikTok, that has sounds of millions of artists on their platform and content. They have to pay to use this. And they did have a licensing deal they inked back in January of 2021, which we'll get to later. But it was time for a new one. TikTok's success as one of the world's largest social platforms has been built in large part on the music created by our artists and songwriters. Its senior executives proudly state publicly that music is at the heart of the TikTok experience, and our analysis confirms that the majority of content on TikTok contains music, more than any other major social platform. In our contract renewal discussions, we have been pressing them on 3 critical issues: appropriate compensation for our artists and songwriters, protecting human artists from the harmful effects of AI, and online safety for TikTok's users. TikTok proposed paying our artists and songwriters at a rate that is a fraction of the rate that similarly situated major social platforms pay. TikTok is only 1% of our revenue. As our negotiations continued, TikTok attempted to bully us into accepting a deal worth less than the previous deal, far less than fair market value, and not reflective of their exponential growth. How did it try to intimidate us? By selectively removing the music of certain of our developing artists while keeping on the platform our audience-driving global stars. TikTok's tactics are obvious. Use its platform power to hurt vulnerable artists and try to intimidate us into conceding to a bad deal that undervalues music and shortchanges artists and songwriters as well as their fans. And TikTok delivered a short and sweet, or sour if you're Universal, response to UMG's Hail Mary attempt with the following. It's sad and disappointing that Universal Music Group has put their own greed above the interests of their artists and songwriters. Despite Universal's false narrative and rhetoric, the fact is they have chosen to walk away from the powerful support of a platform with well over 1 billion users that serves as a free promotional and discovery vehicle for their talent. TikTok has been able to reach artist-first agreements with every other label and publisher. Clearly, Universal's self-serving actions are not in the best interests of artists, songwriters, and fans. For us to better understand why this conflict exists, as well as why UMG decided to opt out of this deal, or call TikTok's bluff in public, we need to understand who UMG serves and what they want. UMG is a publicly traded company, which means several things. The first is that all of their revenue and spend is published on an annual report that's sent to all of their shareholders. They're a business, so they need to make money, and for their shareholders to stay invested and for more people to buy shares in UMG, they need to keep growing in revenue. Basic stuff. Unfortunately, this somewhat conflicts with their artists. For example, there was a report that stated 70% of the revenue from streaming in the US market came from, quote, old music. Now, the definition for old here is 18 months ago and before. So let's say we're talking today, it would be mid-2022 and earlier. There have also been tons of different companies buying up old catalogs of artists, some for hundreds of millions, and many in the tens of millions. So there's a lot of money from old music. TikTok isn't too valuable when it comes to that. Sure, there have been a couple of songs that were really old that blew up again and started charting because of it, Dreams by Fleetwood Mac as an example, but that happened a while ago. And they still have 32 million monthly listeners on Spotify. Also, please hit subscribe. Half of y'all watching aren't even subbed, and I'm trying to hit 1 million before I start graying on the sides. TikTok's real value comes from blowing up songs for up-and-coming artists, new artists, or new hits for already successful artists. Take Drake's Tootsie Slide, for instance. That was created with the full purpose of TikTok virality. But when promoting as well as investing in up-and-coming artists, we know the stat that most of them fail, and one successful artist pays for 10 other failures. So there's a gamble here, whereas the income from the old catalog is pretty much guaranteed. Which one looks better on the balance sheet? And if we just look at the catalog that UMG owns, and their monthly listeners without having released any new music for decades, you have artists like The Beatles with 33 million monthly listeners, Bob Marley and the Wailers, with 19 million monthly listeners. Nirvana, 30 million. Queen, 50 million. Do I even need to continue? The Beach Boys, Marvin Gaye, Frank Sinatra, and when you include, quote, newer artists from the past just 20 years, they have catalogs for Drake, Taylor Swift, The Weeknd, Justin Bieber, Blink-182, and so much more. And what is worth more, Drake's Take Care or Drake's next album? One is a guaranteed bet. The other is a gamble that is less likely to be true. And even if it is true that his next album will be bigger than any other album he has ever made, it just makes his older albums more valuable if that so happens to be the case. When UMG goes into a licensing deal with TikTok, they allow them access to their entire catalog of timeless hits that people can use for content. There's a familiarity that the consumer has with these songs, and it helps these TikTokers and the company itself. TikTok desperately needed all of that music to continue to grow a couple of years ago. Also in that same vein, they can also use UMG's newer artists' music, which is the potential positive, and that these new artists blow up because of it. But that was the issue that UMG claimed it was running into from what we read previously. By selectively removing the music of certain of our developing artists, while keeping on the platform our audience-driving global superstars. UMG's gripe is, hey, you're using our hit songs, most of which existed before you even existed as a platform, aiding in the visibility of your content creators, and it's good for your app, whilst you're removing or opting out of suggesting people using sounds of our new artists that are unproven, which if you're UMG, you're looking at it like you're getting the bad part of the deal. UMG wants to get paid what they believe is a fair rate for the licensing of their entire catalog, whilst also benefiting from TikTok helping them grow new acts that will be a part of their future valuable catalog. And since other platforms like Instagram are paying a rate that TikTok refuses, UMG says, if IG's paying us this, why won't you? TikTok's aims are different though. TikTok is completely different. First, it's a Chinese company, and second, it's a social media platform. Social media platforms make the majority of their money from advertisers, some of them from a share of in-app purchases, and TikTok is now even implementing a shop, but we won't go that far. For advertisers to want to pay you, you need a lot of eyeballs. And to get eyeballs, you need content creators who will make the content that brings the audience. This took a ton of marketing dollars to get adoption, as many people tried to clown TikTok years ago. When I saw the behemoth coming from day one, they did something incredibly smart which other social media apps didn't do, is that they didn't make you work hard for views. Take YouTube for instance. A random person is not going to upload a video for the first time and get a lot of views. This almost never happens. They'd be lucky to get 2 views, and it would be a long time before they got a handle of the system to get good views. But with TikTok, it felt like anything that a person posted for their first couple of posts would go viral, getting millions of views, and that was the dopamine hit they needed to keep chasing the high and creating content to populate the feed for users. Another thing TikTok did well was that it had a killer algorithm, in that it was able to get the viewing taste of the user so fast and deliver them exactly the content they wanted to watch so they would continue to spend time on the app. TikTok initially needed music for this, and they would have kind of operated in a gray area without official licenses like most companies do until the labels come knocking. And they would eventually sign a licensing deal in January of 2021 with UMG and others. We're excited to enter this new era with UMG and UMPG to continue supporting artists and songwriters by working together to help reach music fans on TikTok. Our platform has been a driver in creating chart hits, and licensing the world's biggest catalog of tracks will continue to inspire our community. In turn, we are proud to partner with UMG and UMPG, which is publishing, to be a source to help new talent emerge and to reintroduce legacy acts to a new audience. Ol Oberman, global head of music for TikTok, who also had 13 years of experience in the music industry. That was, I believe, a 3-year deal. And this was coming off of Old Town Road's success, keep in mind, early 2021. So TikTok was huge, but it wasn't TikTok today, or even TikTok in 2022, which is where the relationship started to sour with the record labels. In an article from October of 2022, it reads, "The ginormous growth in TikTok's advertising revenues isn't, according to a handful of very senior figures in the music industry interviewed by us, being reflected in the money the platform is paying through to the record business, and the record business is losing patience." This was in response to the growth in advertising revenue that TikTok was generating and what they felt was a discrepancy in comparison to how much they were getting paid. Take a look at this chart. This is year-over-year growth, not the actual revenue generated. And we want to look at the orange bars because that is ad-funded streaming. So it's money being generated through, quote, free streams, such as YouTube, Spotify with no subscription, Facebook, and TikTok. There was a contraction from H1, which is the first half of 2021, to H1, first half of 2022. And that could be a multitude of different reasons, but one of the angles they came out was, why is there such a contraction when TikTok's advertising revenue nearly tripled from $2.1 billion in H1 of 2021 to an estimated near $6 billion in H2 of 2022? The major labels had signed buyout agreements with TikTok. These deals involve a lump sum payment from TikTok for using licensed music for a fixed period of a couple of years, in this case, typically for short video content. All TikToks at that time were under 60 seconds. So the record labels saw it as getting free money to a degree, paid for a trailer of the music so the user could go listen to it on Spotify or another streaming platform. But while initially seen as beneficial, there became a growing concern when they saw how much money TikTok was making and believed music was the driver of this. They were upset, and a growing group of people in the music industry didn't like it and believed they needed to strike a revenue share deal with TikTok as soon as possible so they could get a piece of the pie of advertising revenue as TikTok continued to grow. Lucian Grange, chairman of Universal, even spoke on this, taking subtle shots at TikTok without naming them outright at a conference that same year, where he said, "Avoid repeating past mistakes that had led to power imbalances with MTV and YouTube in particular. We were given a lot of reasons why our artists shouldn't get paid. People said, it's great promotion, or you can use it as a platform for discovering new artists. And then technology platforms were built on the backs of the artists' hard work and those who invested in artists early in their careers, with very little return. And UMG started pushing for these deals in negotiations and asking for higher rates, including other major players such as Sony and Warner. All of the record labels, but TikTok was now a behemoth. In December of 2022, Ol Obermann, the global head of music for TikTok, announced, reflecting on 2022, it's clear that artist success travels to our platforms, with 13 out of 14 Billboard Hot 100 number ones supported by viral trends on TikTok, including 10 of the 12 number ones in the UK. Our platform continues to unlock real-world opportunities for artists and labels with a brilliantly engaged community who love to build connections with artists and their music, and the impact of that is undeniable. Their power was here. Only several months later, fast forward to February of 2023, TikTok initiated an interesting experiment in the Oceania region of the world. Think countries like Australia, Papua New Guinea, New Zealand, and other islands. TikTok removed all major record label music from use for a subset of its users in that region for a period of time. TikTok's official statement was the following: some of our community on Australia will not be able to access our full TikTok sounds library at the moment. This will only affect certain music and is scheduled work while we analyze how sounds are accessed and added to videos, as well as looking to improve and enhance the wider sounds library. We appreciate it's disappointing if a certain track is unavailable or if a sound is muted on a previous video. This change will not be in place for long, and not all music is affected. We look forward to restoring our full catalog soon. Now, why would they do this? Well, they were in negotiations with record labels who claim that music is what built their platform, and TikTok needs it to continue and should therefore pay them revenue share and higher rates than their previous deal. What better to come to negotiations with than zero or minimal change in the usage of your app when all of your music was unusable? Basically letting them know, we don't need you anymore. Ol Obermann would be asked about this in a print interview, and he would largely dodge the question, saying it was just an experiment to see user behavior and wasn't to gather data to see how their users would react to music being pulled. But he did say something interesting. So again, the guiding principle is we get fully relicensed with every single music rights holder out for any song on TikTok. But we also think about if we were put in a position where we had to take down a catalog or a partial catalog, how do we still make the user experience compelling enough for our creators and users? TikTok has been planning for their reaction to a fallout like this for years now, and have strategically placed themselves in a strong position. But only time will tell. The first was their entrance into artist services with SoundOn. TikTok launched Sound On in 2021, which was its own distribution and marketing service in key markets like the UK, US, Brazil, Indonesia, and Australia. Sound On was designed to support new and undiscovered artists by offering services like audience insights, developmental tools, and music promotion. This initiative was crucial for TikTok since it ensured a continuous supply of music to the platform, regardless of the status of any of its agreements with major labels. The service also allows artists to directly upload their music to TikTok's commercial music library, which is also accessible for brand promotions. Then there was their investment in AI music creation. ByteDance, which is the parent company of TikTok, was heavily investing in artificial intelligence for music creation. This move, by their acquisition of JukeDeck, which was a UK-based AI music startup, and other subsequent hirings of machine learning and AI music creation specialists. But it wouldn't be until the announcement of Ripple in June of 2023 that it was official. Ripple is an app with two big features: a melody-to-song generator and a virtual recording studio. The melody-to-song feature lets users sing or hum a melody directly into the app, and Ripple then expands the melody by generating an instrumental in a bunch of different genres, and this was trained by music that was licensed to ByteDance, but claims are made that it did not use any music from major record labels to train this AI. TikTok also offers virality and reach, which is something that every up-and-coming unsigned artist as well as independent artists are searching for desperately. And if millions of songs by popular recording artists are removed, that's just competition out of the way, which allows for more opportunities by incredibly talented yet unseen artists to gain new fans. These people are hungry. They're not concerned with TikTok payouts. It's a one-sided net positive for them. Ultimately, like I said, time will tell what the outcome will be. But TikTok has done everything it can to protect itself from this situation, and it's very difficult for me to imagine users that are so addicted to an application with content that is custom tailored to them are going to leave. And content creators are just going to try new and inventive ways to try to upload a lot of music not available in the library, and that is removed by UMG. Which leads to this game of whack-a-mole with DMCA claims that have to be made by Universal, costing them a ton of money for this labor. And if by the time they find the content it's already gotten 1 million views, it kind of did its job already. Although TikTok is kind of developing a better system of content ID. There's also another problem with UMG's claim that I somewhat side with TikTok on, which was that these other social media platforms agreed to pay them higher rates to use their music, and TikTok wanted to pay them lower rates than their previous deal, which kind of makes sense because TikTok kind of doesn't need them now and they're way bigger than they were. But circling back, most likely Facebook, which has Instagram Reels, is who they were talking about. But the thing is, TikTok now has a creativity program with a strong financial incentive for creators to keep making content there. 1 million views on videos longer than a minute have been shown to generate anywhere from $600 to $800 all the way up to $1,000 to $1,100, whilst IG Reels pays out a whopping nothing, and YouTube Shorts pays you 2 pennies you can rub together for the same views. As long as TikTok is able to keep creators who will make engaging content that people love to watch, they'll keep the viewers on the platform, which keeps the advertisers, and the content creators will adjust their content to use different types of music, which seemingly is becoming less of a necessity in TikTok for longer form content from what I'm seeing. TikTok has also said that it was able to reach deals with Warner and Sony, which could mean that the artists of these record labels will likely experience a benefit that Universal doesn't, their artists being the next up for use since they're already mainstream, recognizable, and easier than finding new or independent artists. And with TikTok being the undeniable greatest platform for music promotion, will it harm negotiating record contracts with upcoming artists if they know that their music can't even show up in TikTok if they sign to a Universal label?